When I ask my friends what they read as children, we all have such different responses. Some people read normal books, like normal children's books, like, Harry, some people were really into Harry Potter, some people were really into ghost stories, they were really into the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, which is actually much younger than I am, but they were into all these very different books, because obviously you have a plethora of books made for children. Now, I have quite an interesting story, because when I was growing up, I did not start off with children's books. I had no interest whatsoever in children's books. And because we had a house full of books, there were books everywhere, I would just pick up a book, or, there was a study in the house, and there was like a little mini library as well. So I would just go and I would just pick up books. And because my family were always buying books, because I had uncles and aunties who were abandoning their books at the house, they were always books. The issue with these books were they were very different, and some of them were not necessarily for someone of my age. They were not age appropriate. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about some of the books I read and what sort of impact they had on me. Okay, so obviously my mother, bless her, she used to buy me children's books. She'd buy me, especially when I was much younger, before I was going into my preteens, she'd buy me children's books. But after a while, because I think my vocabulary and my understanding advanced so quickly, because I lived in a house with many adults and I would listen to their conversations, I would go through the books in a day. I would go through a whole stack of books in a day. So it got to a point where the children's books were no longer sufficient, and then that became a problem. One of the first books I read, as one of the first adult books I read, was Jeffrey Archer. He was a ex-politician. Shall We Tell the President? So someone in the house kept buying thrillers, and Shall We Tell the President was a thriller about an assassination attempt on the president, I believe of the US, but he never found out about it. And what I found most fascinating about the book, although I read it all the way through, and I was a kid, I read this book all the way through, was the way it ended, where it ends with a line. I think the two Secret Service agents are walking back towards the White House, and they're going through everything that's happened. Obviously, they've stopped the assassination attempt, and they're going through everything that's happened. One of them goes to the other, shall we tell the president? And I thought, oh, that's a good way to end the story. And I realized then that there were all these different ways that you could actually end stories. It didn't have to end in a very structured way. You could just end it with a sentence, and that would be enough. And that was interesting for me to observe. Next book I read was the Kama Sutra. Yeah. Completely inappropriate. I believe what happened with that book, the illustrations, was that they were actually locked away in a part of the house. But when the house was being cleaned or things were being rearranged, doors would get left open. And trust me, I was always trying every door. So I found this door open one day, and I had a window about 45 minutes. I went in and grabbed some books. One of them was the Kama Sutra, and I got the hell out. It was a very quick operation, in and out. The Kama Sutra was interesting because it wasn't like a story, it wasn't fiction, it was just more illustrations of people in the act. And I found it all rather boring. But I do believe that there was a bit in the book where Indian practices were mentioned, and we had a guest who came to dinner who was from India, and talking to him, I didn't mention the Kama Sutra because I was smart enough to know I should not have had access to it, but speaking to him, I realized that's when I learnt about self-immolation, which is a practice which is now actually illegal I believe it's illegal now in India, although I think it's still practiced in some places, but it's largely forbidden, illegal. Yeah. And self-immolation is the practice of setting yourself on fire. Now, one book I read as a kid that I think I was a bit young for, not young, but was The Wind in the Willows. I loved The Wind in the Willows because it was a very genteel, very soft story, and that was when I realized that you could write, you could put creatures who are not necessarily human in your books. You had Toad of Toad Hall, and you had all these amazing creatures, and you could put them in books and you could bring them to life, and that really stirred up my imagination, and it made me realize that as long as you were writing a story, you could bring your own story to life. And for me, that was just amazing to read, and it was also amazing to witness as well, especially as a child, where we were constantly being told as we grew up, Raffles, we were constantly being told as we grow up, wakey, you're going into the real world now, responsibility, get all that fantasy stuff out of your head. Your parents wanted you, a lot of parents wanted their kids to go into the medical practices, to go into the sciences, to go into the moneyed jobs. So there was no real room for fantasy or dream-like states or having your head in the clouds. And my head was always in the clouds. So The Wind in the Willows was a good escape for me, and it was very well written as well. Let's talk about the woman of the hour, Nancy Drew. I loved Nancy Drew. I was obsessed with Nancy Drew. If I would have gotten the chance as a kid to have visited this place where Nancy Drew lived, wherever River Heights, I would have gone there because I was obsessed with this girl. And it really pained me to realize that the writer behind her, sorry, there's some building work going on, and it's been going on for so many days, and it's just going on all summer, and I just have to make videos. So anyway, it pained me to realize that the writer behind Nancy Drew, Caroline Keene, didn't actually exist. That really did hurt, and I don't know why it hurt me so much. Because I was obsessed with the books. I was obsessed with all the books, the characters, George, Bess, Ned. I thought Ned was a bit useless sometimes. But I was obsessed with the books. And when I realized the author didn't actually exist, that it was a ghostwriter, or was made up of ghostwriters writing the series, that was a bit painful. But I was obsessed with Nancy Drew, everything about her, and for me it was the first strong, intelligent female character in a book that showed you that you could have a boyfriend, you could have a job, you could be witty, you could do all these different things, and life was great. So I was just happy with the way they wrote her. There was not, from my recollection, the way Nancy Drew was written was amazing. If anybody has any insight into that, if anything has changed, let me know. But back then, it was amazing. And I think they're still trying to revive her books now, or revive the stories now, because there were such well-written stories, and I think every girl should read them, because I think they were very well written. Okay, then I have the next series of books were the Hardy Boys. I wasn't so into the Hardy Boys, but because my mum had realised I was into Nancy Drew, and I kept going into the local bookshop several times a week after school and trying to buy books, and it was becoming an obsession, an addiction, and I was going through the books very quickly. They had to make sure that I was reading other books, so there was this lovely shop near our house, Glendora, and this woman stocked books, just books, and she was just it was an amazing shop. She just had books everywhere, and I used to go in after school because it was my way back from school, so we'd drive there and stop, and I'd get out and check out what new books she had, and just the smell and the fresh paperback smell was just amazing. But obviously, because I'd developed quite an intense obsession with Nancy Drew, my mum was like, okay, we don't want her to just buy Nancy Drew books, we want her to get other series as well. So my mum's tried to put me onto Hardy Boys, and I started reading Hardy Boys as well. I wasn't so into Hardy Boys as well because but I did start reading them, and they were fun to read. They were interesting characters as well, very well written, balanced teenagers. So it was a very healthy reading habit, and there was nothing that was nefarious or dodgy in any of the books. They were very well written, and they were so good that I actually got my cousin hooked onto them, and he started reading them as well. But my cousin, I think boys are not encouraged to read as much, which is a shame, because I think that reading is just so wonderful. It's so wonderful, it's so peaceful, it's so just beautiful. And my cousin started, but I think one or two of his friends said something to him, because suddenly he didn't want to be seen with the books. I think someone did say something, but my goodness, why would you ever think reading was bad? But I think he does read now, but I think he just keeps it all to himself. Yes, and the final books that became an obsession for me, again, The Babysitter's Club. Those are really good books, and I absolutely adored them. I thought they were a bit weird sometimes that all these girls were babysitting, and I don't know, I have a lot of issues around safety and responsibility and stuff, well, The Babysitter's Club were amazing books as well, well written, balanced, just very nice, but very light, airy, and you could read at your own pace. And apart from all those, I also read in Nigeria, we had a lot of local comics from different regions. So my parents wanted me to read a lot of Nigerian influenced books as well, and stories. So I was always reading those. And then we had all the stories around the legends and the Orisha, and like Oduduwa and all the myths and folklore. And I read those books as well. Fascinating stories, very rich storytelling that, I'm hoping continues to get passed down through the generations. But yeah, and if you ever want to check out any Nigerian books or sort of Nigerian myths and folklores, especially because we have so many different tribes in the country, just Google them. You should Google the gods, the fascinating stories around how they came to be, and there's so many fascinating stories around, especially West African culture as well, even from places like Ghana and Nigeria are more popular, but luckily Cameroon is classified as Central Africa, which still blows my mind. But all these stories are coming out now, and they're becoming stronger, and they're just fascinating to hear about, and they will absolutely stoke your imagination as well. Now, it's interesting because a lot of these books shape me in different ways, and they let me know that, first of all, you could write in so many different ways, different genres, because I was getting all my entertainment from different sources, some that I should have had access to, and some that I should have had no access to whatsoever. But although I did read books that I shouldn't have read, it still lit a fire beneath me, because it made me realize that as an author, as a writer, you can write across different genres. You can write whatever you want to write. You can write whatever story. You can use your imagination to the best of your ability. You can just go at it. As long as the story is entertaining, there's purpose behind it, there's an aim, it will take the reader on a journey. Oh, something just collapsed there. It will take the reader on a journey. You go ahead. And for me, that's why it's so important for children especially to read early on. When I see children, when you get the chance to, I was going to say hang out with children, which does not sound right, but I do teach kids. When you get the chance to ask them about themselves, what they're reading, and they say, oh, we don't read. For me, that's so sad. My heart breaks. Because I'm like, you don't know what you're missing. You're missing a world within a world. You're missing therapy. You're missing friends. You're missing imagination. You're missing escape. So many things. And one thing I found, especially from working with children with in care early on in my life, was that the reading helped them. Because once it was their bedtime, they would get into bed and I'd ask them, what are you reading? And they'd open a book and they'd start reading and then they'd fall asleep. And they were just so at peace because that book gave them an escape, and just the silence in books was just the most amazing feeling. And it was actually more beneficial to them than detrimental, and it actually calmed them down. And also when I was younger, when I was a kid, my mother used to read to me, and that was where I found out about Paddington, because Paddington was one of the very early stories introduced to me. And one of my best memories in my life ever was arriving on a Lagos to London flight with my mum, going into the house in London, and it was very cold. I believe it was winter. It was cold, it was freezing, and my mum, everything was setting everything up in the house, and I was tired, and my mum said, okay, get into bed. So I got into bed with her, and she pulled out a book, and it was a Paddington book, and she started reading to me about Paddington, and my mum introduced me to Paddington, and it's just such an amazing memory. So yes, if you're an adult and you don't read, get to reading. If you have kids, get them reading. It's such a good escape to have. And if you're reading anything good at the moment, do let me know. I'm always open to recommendations. At the moment, I'm reading The Retreat by Mark Edwards. And it's okay. It's a slow burner set in Wales, I believe. Yeah. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. But yes, any comments, let me know. Any book recommendations, let me know. If you're going on a reading journey, let me know. If there are any reading retreats that exist, let me know as well. Alright, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.